Now, the Supreme Court's judgment, 8 months after the election, has ignited discussions about the electoral process. Are there any lessons Nigeria can learn from the judgment about electoral reforms and the court? We're now being joined by two senior advocates of Nigeria, Jibrin Okutepa and Patrick Ikwueto. Gentlemen, good to see you both. And let's start with you, Patrick. Quite a number of issues that Nigerians would not leave in a hurry. We're just looking at some of the key legalese on the day. First off, let's talk about some of the issues raised, talking about lacking in merit and some few other comments we've also heard from politicians now. But again, let's first talk about when they say lack in merit. Perhaps your understanding can help expatiate this for us.
Well, first of all, good evening and thanks for having me tonight. When a court says that a matter lacks merit, is a very simple way of saying, I won't grant this matter. And because it's not something I think meets what in my own constitution I should grant. So when it says it lacks merit in the sense that I haven't found the issues and the facts proven to me. That is the court itself.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Let's bring in Jibrin Okutepa, who is also a senior advocate of Nigeria. Good to see you tonight on Newsnight. So the question on the lips of so many, with all that's unveiled today at the Supreme Court, what are the lessons to be drawn here? Some are saying maybe it's time for us to take a look again at our electoral law and see how we can ensure that elections or arbitration and all of that is rounded up before swearing in. What are your thoughts?
Well, thank you, Ngozi and Solomon, for having me. I don't think that the problem we have is with the electoral process. I think the problem is us. We are where we are because of whom we are. And I think that the judgments of today has opened the eyes of so many legal practitioners, politicians, and so many persons that a lot need to be done to strengthen our democracy. From the time we started the democratic experiment to today, we have seen that we've not been able to get it right. The Supreme Court had affirmed the judgments of the Court of Appeal sitting as presidential election petition. But there are a lot of issues that should worry us and should bother us. For instance, when their lordships affirm the decision of the Court of Appeal that you need to file along with the petition witness statement on oath of subpoena witnesses, otherwise their witnesses become evidence, cannot be countenanced, you cannot call. We need to look at it. Can you do that? How will you do it? Because we're all aware that when elections are held, tribunals are constituted, not all, before they come to sit, the 21 days allowed to file petition had expired. So where do you get the judge to give you order? And how do you get subpoena witnesses to front-load their witness statements? So I think we need to look at the logicality of that jurisprudence before we put a spanner in the development of our democracy in this country. Because there are some vital witnesses that may not want to come to testify unless there is an order of court. And the Electoral Act has allowed the use of the Evidence Act as part of the laws guiding the proceedings before the court. And the Evidence Act allows subpoena witnesses in any trial of our election or any other trial in civil proceedings and criminal trials, as my little knowledge of law can go. So I think that we need to look at that aspect before we begin to decree lawlessness as a way of ascending to power in Nigeria.
All right, okay. We'll come back to you, and we'll also come back to some of the questions raised by Ngozi, speaking of which, lessons. Let's bring in Patrick Ikwueto. And I'm also looking at some of the issues raised on the day, which Jibrin Okutepa has also spoken of. New evidence not admissible on appeal. Petitioners expecting the court to manufacture votes and evidence for them, and so on. Aren't these some basic knowledge that ordinarily lawyers should know and not push?
Well, if you ask me, I think the root cause of the problem is in our institutions. And when we say we will do something, we must do what we say we will do. Everybody was aware that before now, election results were issues of a lot of controversy because you had ballot stuffing, you had ballot snatching, and all those kind of things. And INEC in its wisdom came up with this very beautiful idea. We're going to ensure all this stops. How do we stop it? We're going to now have electronic transmission of results of elections. And then I think from what I had and what I know, a lot of resources went down in trying to create that architecture, whereby results of elections are transmitted electronically in real time on the day of the election from the polling unit using the beavers to the IREV. And this happened in all the other elections, National Assembly, State House Assembly, except for the presidential. Except for the presidential. And then they gave a reason why that didn't happen. He said there were technological glitches why that didn't happen. Because if that had happened, we wouldn't have all these stories about you didn't provide the result, you didn't produce evidence, you didn't produce this and that. But in their wisdom, INEC, who brought that system, who brought that innovation, abandoned it in the case of the presidential. And this is why we think that our institutions need to be held accountable to what they say they will do and that they will do them. I don't think that the problem is much of the law, because the law to apply is there. And I'm privileged to have read the INEC documents that preceded this election. And one of them was very vehement and very explicit that they now want to enthrone a credible, transparent process. And how they were going to do that was to utilize technology and have these results all on the IREF. But that didn't happen. And that was the most unfortunate thing that happened in this election.
Well, still taking it from what senior advocate here has said, does this now call for another look or an amendment to the electoral law to be really, really specific as to the mode of transmission of results? Because the Supreme Court upheld what the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal said, that it's left to the discretion of INEC to decide what mode it will use. Should the law be specific and clear without any ambiguities, without any doubts as to the specific way INEC should transmit election results? Well, this question is for SAN Okutepa.
Right.
Ngozi, the provisions of the Electoral Act gives INEC to determine the mode of transmitting election results. And they did that in their manual for election. So I'm at a loss as to why INEC was not held bound by the law which itself promulgated. My worry is not about the law, like my learned brother P.I. Electoral said. It's about us, about Nigerians, about our institutions that seems to have lost the independence expected of them. Now, I'm a little bit worried. Their lordships have done their job, and that's what they are supposed to do. They have done so. I'm worried about the after effect of the decisions of our courts. because politicians are masters in the act of following to their advantage decisions of court. Now, when you talk about looking at the jurisprudence that we have always been having, that when you are talking that something is wrong with elections at polling unit, you must call polling unit agents, you must demonstrate results, you must do this, you must do that. Are we not aware how Nigerian politicians have blocked witnesses from polling units from coming to testify? That is why I think that Section 137 of the Electoral Act was put there for our judiciary to utilize it and hold these institutions accountable for misconduct coming from them that has the capacity and is posing a very serious danger to the growth of our democracy. Because as of today, I do not think that our democracy is a product of government of the people, by the people, and for the people. I think it's a product of he who has the power to do what is not really right and come to power. And all you need to do to be in power is just declare, do what you need to do, and you are declared. And then there is a roadblock on the part of the supposed losers to prove that you didn't win, because the roadblocks are so difficult to surmount. And that's what you have seen. Very many people know what happened, but the judiciary does not know, because the judiciary does not go to the market to look for evidence. Even if the evidence is available, if it has not come properly the way it should come, then the judiciary is hamstrung, is castrated. So there are a lot of things that has to do with our character, our persons, our the way we love this nation, and let's do what is right. Because for me, it appears that doing the wrong things has acquired the notoriety of acceptability in Nigeria.
Okay, we'll bring it here to SA and Ikwueto, and I know you're itching to comment on some of the key things raised by Okutepa, then quickly also let us in on the way forward.
Well, my learned brother, Mr. Okutepa, did in fact make the point, and I'd like to add my voice to what he has said, because the question which my sister Ngozi posed was whether we need to amend the law so that we can put now specifically that election results must be transmitted electronically by INEC. But if I know very well, it's not about making law. You can put the law, there will be another loophole. INEC itself made a subsidiary legislation. It made its own manual where it did state step-by-step process for the election and indicated that election result will be transmitted electronically. And if you remember very well, I think the INEC chairman and the INEC officers went around and were making all sorts of pledges, all sorts of representation that they are bound to utilize the IREV, that this IREV has come to stay and it must work. What worries me really is that this statement, to me, they were in the nature of something, a word, somebody's given his word, and which should be his bond. So whether we amend the law or not, I believe that what we have presently caters enough for that position.
Right. Well, before we wrap this, back to SA and Okutepa. On still the issue, let's even talk about the final outcome. How do you get to that final outcome of declaring who the winner is and who the loser is? In Nigeria, it's still about the majority, simple majority. In places like Kenya and other parts of the world, you must score 50+1, to be a clear winner. Should we begin to look in that direction? I mean, for you to be elected, not just a majority of votes.
You see, our law, our constitutions have set out how somebody can win and become declared in Nigeria. The problem is not whether the law is deficient in that field. The problem is whether or not we are ready as a nation to hold ourselves accountable to the provisions of the law. Because there are no consequences in Nigeria, And just look at the way it has happened. Now, whatever INEC did, INEC does no wrong, even when the wrongs are obvious to the blind. The deaf can feel it, but because their lordships are not a trader in Wuse market, and they don't go to listen to what goes on, they are not in a position to do what they are supposed to do, but they know what is right. So for me, it's not about whether winning by majority or lawful vote, because the law talks about majority of lawful votes. When votes are therefore manufactured and given and not following a process set out by law, that to me cannot be lawful vote. The vote must be lawful, and that vote must follow the procedures set out by law. And INEC manual, the Supreme Court has said, constitute law. So I really don't know what's wrong with our law. I think what is wrong is with the people who are given responsibility to administer our laws and who are afraid of doing what is right, and there are no consequences for not doing what is right. So we are where we are because of whom we are. Unless we change, nothing will change. Bring laws that is the best law. Once they are operated by bad people, you can't get the good results.
So, to any lessons to learn, I mean, just in 30 seconds, if you can, let's say Ikwueto.
What I think is that this election has thrown up some excitement at the time it took place. So what I would urge Nigerians as a nation or as a people is to keep up the momentum. There will be other elections. Let us not be dampened in our spirit and say, my vote won't count. We would get there someday. And I believe that if we continue to hold our institutions, our public officials responsible to their duties, we will get there.
All right, okay. I think it's a fine place for us to leave it. I would like to thank you, both of you, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Jibrin Okutepa, and Patrick Ikwueto. Thank you.